from what I looked at, it's cause and effect. This person did this to cause this to happen. So that's where I'm going to be coming from on the show.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Top Fives with Don SILL. I'm your host, Don SILL, and we got another great Top Fives in store for you today. It's the top 5 comedians that push comedy forward. You know, the pioneers of comedy, the guys that helped evolve comedy and stand up into how we know it today. Yeah, those guys. And joining me today is the hilarious comedian Joe Currie.
I don't want to be in a crashing airliner and somebody's praying to Allah, somebody's praying to Jesus, and somebody's praying to Buddha, and there I am, to who it may concern.
Joe's been on the scene for a long time, and he's a true veteran of the craft, and he knows a thing or two about a thing or two. Just look at some of the guys he hangs with. And as always, everybody, please don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and comment below. We want to hear what you're thinking. But now let's get right into it. Me and Joe Currie talking about the top 5 comedians that push comedy forward. All right, Joe Currie, how are you, my friend? How's
everything? Good, Don. Good. Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to have you on this top 5 because this is the, basically the top 5 comedians who push comedy forward. And,
right.
And I know, talking to you in the past, you've been a judge on our show, Put Up,
right.
Shut Up, and Stand Up. And we got to talk a little bit about comedy, history, and I could tell that you kind of are really in tune with the history of comedy and appreciate it.
From vaudeville, going into the 50s, going into the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, there's always been the pioneers that paved that were game changers. And it's good to know those guys and get influenced by them.
How important do you think it is for comedians to know the history of comedy?
It's very important to know where it came from, how it evolved. And to tell you the truth, on my show, Davinston, we do it every Tuesday. Little quick plug.
Yeah.
But we at the end of our show, it's the wrap up. Hey, I'll be here at Hard Horse. But Joe, what are you doing? And I mentioned I'm doing the show. So Davin goes, well, what guys you got? And I go, well, I've got this person, that person, this person, that person. Well, you're forgetting about this person because this person opened, and you're forgetting about that person. So as I know my history, I kind of had my personal favorites overshadow what really the history is. And basically, from my standing, it's going to be this person caused this to happen. Also, from where I'm going, my point is starting from the 60s, not like from the vaudeville and stuff like that, because a lot of those guys were in show business. But to me, it wasn't the essence of what got actual stand-up going. And from what I looked at, it's cause and effect. This person did this to cause this to happen. So that's where I'm going to be coming from on the show.
Very cool. Yeah, and I think I'm coming kind of from the same place that you're talking about, because we could have gone all the way back, like you said, into vaudevillian days and into the first, comedian, like the Will Rogers and the Mark
right.
Twains and all of that. But like you said, like stand up as we know it. So like, even guys like Milton Berle and Bob Hope, to me, are stand up comedians who probably they did push it forward, indeed. But to me, like to your point, they were more like triple threats. They were song, dance guys, actors.
Exactly. And yeah, look, they were good. They were the masters of their craft. But I don't think Bob Hope changed anything. I don't think that Henny Youngman changed anything. They weren't, and you really had to sit and think. And I have to thank Davin for that, because basically he put some thoughts in my head. I'm like, you what, you got a point. And I went through the list and I'm like, all right, this is the cause and effect of where it went. And from my voice, I hope it goes, I take it from the late 50s going into the 60s when it really started to evolve as an art form.
We're definitely on the same page with that, because I think the late 50s is kind of when the changing of the guard happened. And, we can get into that because some of those guys are probably on your list of when kind of the stand-up as we know it started to blossom and happen, and then that evolved into what we have today. So that's really cool. So but without further ado, let's get into this top 5 comedians who pushed comedy forward. We'll go with you first, Joe. What's your number 5?
Number 5 to me would be Lenny Bruce. Now, Lenny Bruce, I did not actually find him particularly funny. I really didn't get his comedy. But what he did was he bridged topics that nobody would tackle. He would be profound, he would be profane, and he'd get arrested all the time.
In the latter two performances, words just ass and were used about 100 times in utter obscenity.
A buddy of mine gave me a tape of Lenny Bruce's act, I think at Cafe Watt. And the set was okay. It wasn't that funny, but the key thing was Carlin was in the audience that night, and Carlin decided that night he's going to change from being a button-down comic to speaking his mind, to speaking openly, what really affected people, to be profane about it, you know? Yeah. So much so that one night Carlin was there, Lenny Bruce got arrested at a show, and Carlin got arrested as well, protesting, and they're in the paddy wagon going downtown, and Carlin, and it's kind of funny, icons are talking to icons, you know? Yeah. And Carlin goes to Lenny Bruce, goes, look, I believe in what you said, and he goes, I got arrested because I believe what you said. And Bruce looked at Carlin and said, you're stupid. Yeah. And to Carlin, who's iconic with, pulling out stupidity, Right. But I think, moving forward in stand-up comedy, where it's gone, would be Lenny Bruce would be one of the, who moved it forward.
I definitely agree, because I think Lenny Bruce may have been possibly the first socially aware comedian, the first kind of comic who critiqued the culture and tackled on subjects that are still taboo today. He tackled religion, he tackled racism, he tackled censorship.
See, on stage, in other words, a stripper in a burlesque house on stage goes, here it is, boys, da-da-da, it's cool. But let her do that in the public park on the way home and her ass is in jail. And the reason for that is that the people in the park didn't ask for that. In other words, you can yell fire in a crowded theater if you're on stage, but don't do it off stage. The theater is make-believe, that's where it's at.
He tackled all kinds of things and kind of put the mirror up to society and show the absurdity and the contradictions and all that kind of stuff within, the greater powers and how it all trickles down. And like you said, he used profanity and vulgarity and shock language to kind of really ignite his philosophies and get them through.
15 years with a black woman or 15 years with a white woman. The white woman is Kate Smith and the black woman is Lena Horne. So you are not concerned with black or white anymore, are you?
He's also, you could argue too, he was kind of a martyr for comedy in a way that
Don, you read my mind, because he is actually the sacrificial lamb who laid down and it cost him his career, cost him everything. Yeah. But to pave the way for all of us, and from you and me to the internet, the internet comic, to all of that, the guy on that paved the way. And I don't know if many comics know about him or know that. Like I said, I didn't find him particularly funny. However, what he was doing was paving the way. He was a game changer.
In the latter two performances, words just ass, balls, cocksucker, cunt, fuck, motherfucker, this shit, and tits were used about 100 times in utter obscenity. Okay, here's how this happened.
Yeah, and he also mixed, English with Yiddish and street slang, and he was jazzy, and he had things. But to your point too, when you watch his stuff now, it's kind of hard to digest it because it's dated. It's not hilariously funny. It didn't really, the comedy itself didn't really stand the test of time, but the messages in there really did.
You know the meaning of obscenity, don't you? Perhaps you know. See, if I do a disgusting show, or use any disgusting word, or I'm just going to be talking about pork, that's my right, you see, as an American citizen, to discuss pork on stage. Although disgust all of you vegetarians and Jews and Muslims, that is my right. And if you communists would like to suppress that right to talk about ham and pork, that's your right.
And like you said, without Bruce, you wouldn't have Carlin. Without Carlin, you wouldn't have Bill Hicks.
Right.
Et cetera.
And you listen to his old stuff, and he's calling out the Kennedy administration.
Yeah.
That, like, I call out the Trump administration, the Obama, the Biden administration. To go up and be able to do a Trump joke or a Biden joke or an Obama joke or back a Clinton joke, the Bush, that he paved the way from that, because basically criticizing a president was not really a popular thing. And he woke everybody up to the fact that, they're politicians, they don't get, and Carlin just accentuated it moving down the road, that we really can't trust these people. These people are really not out for us. And to have the freedom to say it without being arrested for indecency,
Right.
that was Lenny Bruce. And we, as comics, we owe a debt of gratitude to Lenny Bruce for opening that up.
For sure. And I wonder what Lenny would think if he was around now with this cancel culture happening and, kind of the heat on people now. It's got to be, I feel like we kind of reverted backwards a little bit.
We absolutely have. We absolutely have, where people are, and what gets me is suddenly everybody's so offended. And suddenly everybody's upset and everybody's offended. I don't get it. And especially if you're touching on subjects where you realize that and you're prefacing it with a fact to introduce, to go into the, like I do a joke about the word retard, the word faggot, the N-word, and I have a whole preamble, I better damn well, a whole preamble going into that, showing the hypocrisy of that.
You gotta say words, you need to. Everything is a letter now. The P word, the C word, and it's gonna get to the point where you won't be able to say the alphabet because 26 people are gonna get pissed off.
And 99%, it's fine, but sometimes you get people that are afraid to laugh or whatever. But
Right.
As a comic, and from Carlin and from Lenny Bruce, I feel that there's something in there that moves me to talk about it, to tease it, and to move forward. And sometimes it's a lightning rod now, but you got to tread the waters and find out what's good and what's not.
Well, that goes back to what Carlin said, his famous line about the comedian's job is to find where the line is and deliberately cross it.
Yeah.
And nowadays, I think it's more and more scary because of the cancel culture to cross the line. Because unlike what happened with Bruce, where he got arrested constantly and then had to go to court and all that, unlike that, this will, and I guess it did destroy his life as well. But in here, through social media, they will tar and feather you and try to destroy you from ever go on stage again.
Here's how it works. The reason that they're concerned with it and liberal with it, and this is really weird, when people are liberal with something, they're ignorant. Because you can always understand something you don't understand.
But we'll keep moving forward. I'll give you my number 5. I do agree. Lenny Bruce is on my list, so I guess Lenny will get a fast track. He's on the list.
Right.
So my number 5, I'll go with Andy Kaufman. So I say Andy Kaufman because I think Andy Kaufman was one of the first kind of anti-comedians where they deliberately do things that are unfunny, but they do it where you're laughing at them and not with them, so kind of. So like if you look at if you look at Andy Kaufman and all of his humor, it's not funny on the surface, but what makes it funny is we're all in the joke together.
Why everyone is going boo on the joke when I told some of the jokes, and then when I don't want you to laugh, you're laughing. Like right now, I don't understand.
And I think that he kind of started a different genre that kind of carried out with Howie Mandel. Early Howie Mandel had that with the glove on his head.
Tom Green. Even locally, and he's in my top 5 comics, George Gallo.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, but when I do that, I'm going to remove all the consonants, all the vowels, all the phonemes from my description of myself, because everybody wants to know about me, but I'm going to keep my mystery. Here we go. So that's about me.
George Gallo definitely carries that torch.
You know, that where it's like, now I was not a very big fan of Andy Kaufman. I didn't get it. Nonetheless, I wasn't a big fan of Lenny Bruce. But the topic tonight is who moved the ball. Regardless,
Right.
you feel that who moved the ball. So to move the ball for guys like Tom Green, Gallo, the other guy, I'm sorry,
Eric
Howie
Andre.
Mandel.
Howie Mandel. Yeah.
Howie Mandel, stuff like that. That was the point of moving them along.
Right. Yeah. So that's why I put Andy on that list, because I was like you when I was younger and used to see Andy Kaufman. I didn't get it as a kid. It took me a while when I started really getting to stand up in my teenage years or whatever to start to appreciate him and what he did.
So, sa pananapitikate po? Oh, 이제 못 내비대가냐 베대게. No. 아, 저 입이다. 저 받아들이 뭐. 자, 맞아.
But it is, and to deliberately make audiences feel uncomfortable, and just that whole style, this kind of edgy, almost dangerous, because you don't know what he's going to do next. And like you said, to your point too, I remember seeing George Gallo back in the day, in the early 2000s and stuff like that, and he had that same kind of vibe where you just didn't know what he was going to do next.
I'm just a regular guy. Nothing different.
Would you like to come home and meet my bloodstained pickup?
And it kind of gives you this keeps you on your toes as an audience member, because you're like, oh my God, what's this guy going to do next?
And a lot of times with George, I think George is brilliant. And a lot of time, and I've known George almost 30 years. I mean, we started together. So I'd be at shows and I'm sitting there going, don't you understand this man is brilliant?
Like, hey, Frank, is that a dud? Did that one work? No? Been there for what, half an hour? That's a dud. Shit! Get the kids in the house! Get the kids in the house!
Beyond brilliant?
Right.
You gotta be kidding me. You can't see the brilliance going on here? Really, you don't?
Right, yeah, exactly.
But it's a very, very unique guy. But like with Andy Kaufman, I tried to be very, I looked at it. I mean, when he did the whole wrestling thing with the women, I'm like, I don't get it.
I'm from Hollywood. I have the brains. That's how I win my matches. I say the bigger they come, the harder they fall. You might be twice as big as me, but I've wrestled women that are twice as big as me, and I've mopped the floor with them.
I don't get it, but I'm not. But where he moved the ball, that's each his own. But he did move the ball forward.
Very cool. All right, so far we got Lenny Bruce and Andy Kaufman, and those are both of our number 5s right now. What's your number 4 pick?
Okay, I would say, and it's going to be a tandem thing. I'm sorry, but I think one goes with the other. I'm going to say the tandem of George Carlin and Richard Pryor. Because
nice.
Where Lenny Bruce left off, they picked up the ball and moved it forward. Where almost every comic their idols are those guys. They're in there, and
Right.
they moved it forward because they got away from the button-down thing. Richard Pryor moved the ball for a lot of the African American comics, and the urban comics and stuff like that. Richard Pryor was there. Also, regular the white comics we had. We loved him as well.
My mother's Puerto Rican and my father's Negro, and we lived in a real big Jewish tenement building in an Italian neighborhood. Every time I go outside, the kids say, "Get him! He's all of them."
George Carlin, once we just thought they moved the ball, and it's a funny thing because I'm trying to, it's like I'm looking at it, I'm like, you know, there's so many you want to do, but I'm like, well, I'm gonna do Tell Don book, because basically I think they work hand in hand, you know, to move the ball forward in that, you know, genre of comedy.
Thank you, Don Pardone. Hi out there. Hi, everyone. Boo, boo, boo. Fine.
Yeah, and they came up in the same time period too. That like,
Yes,
so
yes.
that they were in like, I think they were in Car Wash. Both of them in that movie Car Wash together.
This is the wet and wild world of the car wash, a business a man can be proud of. George Carlin, Professor Irwin Currie, the Pointer Sisters, Richard Pryor. They all come together at the fabulous, freewheeling Soap and Emporium, where everything goes.
And so they definitely were in the same time period, you know, in the 70s, 80s, and through the 90s.
And I don't know about you, Don, but me, it's like you would watch. I gotta do this. I have to be this guy, or I have to be like this guy. But I've got to do this.
George Carlin was probably my biggest influence in comedy, as a comedy fan, and when I dabbled in comedy. George Carlin is the dude to this day, my whole life, ever since the first time I ever seen him on stage. I love George Carlin.
Here's a word that started out okay, started out all right. Nothing wrong with the word fuck originally. I mean, there it was. You're not a bad word. You're not a bad word. You've just gotten in with bad company.
What's great about him, and I agree with you, both of these guys pushed it forward big time.
Yeah.
They inspired generations. And so to me, I think like with Carlin, he's able to, in one part of his set, could literally do fart jokes.
I've got 4 farts, and that's not one of mine. I've got my Heineken's fart. I got my broccoli fart, my rice pudding fart, and my non-dairy creamer fart. And that's not one of my farts.
And then the next part of his set, he's talking politics and you know, philosophies and social awareness, and getting real deep and making sense, and it's funny. And you know, and then his play on words, he's a true craftsman, wordsmith.
Yes.
You know, the way he crafted a joke. Where when you look at Pryor, I think Pryor was more loose with his wordplay, and dug more deeper into his personal life.
Since you love me so much, I remember this one. It strike the match like this. Say, what's that? Richard Pryor running down the street.
Thank you. You read my mind. I was just thinking that because Carlin would look and observe and comment. Pryor would dig deep inside, and that inspired a lot of. I'll give you a perfect example. Jim Norton. You know how deep Jim Norton gets.
Yeah.
Pryor is his main influence.
Right,
If I'm correct, I believe it is. That and that gave you the courage. This is my idol. When I do this, I'm gonna dig deep into and bare my soul, and tell you how I feel about something, and goof on it. And that inspired guys like that, Louis C.K., you know, that would dig and give you uncomfortable things, personal uncomfortable things that they would do. That's Pryor's influence right there.
Louis C.K. might be the best example of if Carlin and Pryor had a child, right? You'd have a Louis C.K.
There's no worse life available to a human than being a caught child molester. And yet they still do it. Which you can only really surmise that it must be really good. I mean, from their point of view.
Because Louis C.K. is also a wordsmith. He crosses the line deliberately, like a comedian's supposed to, and he also does dig deep personal. I mean, he talked about, what was it, in one of his last bits where he had a crush on, what was he was watching the movie about Magic Mike.
Channing Tatum comes out, fucking. And then I go like, fuck, and then I have to stop. Because I'm starting to get a feeling.
So he's getting like, he's really opening up the curtains and showing you his soul, you know. And then of course in you know, privately he opened up and showed more than that. But I think Louis C.K. is definitely comes down the food chain from Carlin and Pryor, almost perfectly intertwined.
Yeah.
The
And
two.
bearing your soul. I mean, that Louis was so true to stand up. It's like you would watch it and it would be hilariously funny scene, and it's almost like crashing where you would watch that too. And you're like, why aren't you laughing? I go, because that was Tuesday. Yeah.
Exactly.
As it stands right now, I lead Richard Pryor in heart attacks 2-1. I am ahead. That's right. Now, however, Richard still leads me 1-0 on burning yourself up. Well, the way it happened was, first Richard had a heart attack, then I had a heart attack, then Richard burned himself up, then I said, fuck that, I'm gonna have another heart attack.
All right, so that's a great one. So we'll put Pryor and Carlin together for number 4 there. My number 4, I'm going to go back again into the 50s and 60s and go with Mort Sahl. So Mort Sahl, the reason I say Mort Sahl, one of the main reasons is because when at the Hungry Eye in San Francisco was where jazz players, they didn't have comedy clubs back then, so it was jazz clubs and hipsters and poets and all that. And Mort Sahl would do stand up there, and he was already breaking the mold. He wasn't wearing a suit and tie, he was just wearing a V-neck, a red V-neck sweater, going up with a newspaper, and would just start conversating with the crowd, which was, nobody was doing that. Right. And one of the guys in the audience, and you mentioned something, a similar story, but I'll say this. So one of the guys in the audience watching this was Lenny Bruce, and he said to the guy sitting with him, he goes, when I grow up, I want to be Mort Sahl. Right. So, and they were close in age, so he just said that as a tongue-in-cheek thing. And then they became good friends and all that. And it kind of reminds me of that Carlin story years later in the paddy wagon.
Absolutely. How one icon, and I do know about Mort Sahl because he was part of that movement out in San Francisco, which was pretty much the same as the movement in Greenwich Village at Cafe War and all those places where those guys were. And then I think, as the story goes, I think, they met. And then he went out to New York or something, the paths crossed and the communities crossed.
Yeah, the communities crossed over because they were the hipster, pot smoking, jazzy type of comedians. Kind of like the same time the Beatniks came out, all those guys, Ginsberg.
That whole scene in San Francisco and the whole scene in Greenwich Village, Right,
yeah. So they all came together, and basically the three of them, it was Lenny Bruce, Mort Sahl, and Shelley Berman were the three comedians that were kind of the new guards that kind of changed comedy forever. But Mort Sahl back then was the bigger name guy, and he was the groundbreaker at that time. Lenny obviously surpassed him, but Mort's still alive to this day.
Oh, is he? Oh, that's great.
He said to me, "Mort, what are you doing in London?" So I said to him, "We're all back. The experiment failed."
He's got to be in his 90s, I guess.
Yeah, he's getting up there, and Shelley passed away a few years ago, and obviously we all know Bruce died a long time ago. But the thing with Mort too was, like you said, the same thing with Lenny, is Mort Sahl was making fun of the Kennedys a lot, and that was very risque for that time period. And he would just go up there and talk cold about the news and just say what was on his mind.
What did you do today, Jack? Well, I got a haircut and talked to some people, got along with them pretty well. Have you thought about what you want to be, Jack? Yeah, I want to be president. We know that. I mean, when you grow up.
And so Mort Sahl, by changing the delivery of comedy into a more conversational style, by changing the dress code of a comedian, taking off the suit, and putting on V-neck, and by talking politics, Mort pushed it forward.
Right.
Cool.
Absolutely.
All right, so now, Joe, it's time for number 3.
Okay, number 3. We're going to thank Davin on this one, okay? Because he enlightened me to this, and I totally forgot about it. Okay, when you talk about women in comedy, You know, you got Phyllis Diller, you got Joan Rivers, Carol Burnett, those ones that did, you know, stand up. I mentioned Joan Rivers. Who was the one that really set the pace for them? Moms Mabley. Moms
great
Mabley
pick.
is for the female comics, and I think all the iconic ones would have agreed that Moms Mabley was the one that started it all. She was deemed the first female stand-up comedy. You know, she worked all the black rooms, and then she trained, you know, she crossed over, and she opened it up not only for African Americans, but for women to be stand-ups. And that set the bar for Joan Rivers, that set the bar for Phyllis Diller, all these iconic comics that came after them, up to the ones that are working today, owe a debt of gratitude to Moms Mabley, because she was the one that got that ball rolling.
When I lose my job, I lose my man. That is, since I got, well, kind of old, you know. Now, don't get me wrong, it ain't no disgrace to be old. But darn, if it ain't inconvenient, I can tell you that much about it.
I definitely agree. That's a great pick. Moms Mabley, what was great about her too was she was kind of dirty at times, and
Yes.
that was her shtick. And what's cool too about her was when she first started doing that mom's character, she was young, and she would play this old lady.
Yes.
But by being young, playing an old lady, she was able to do that until she actually became an old lady herself. So her whole
Just
career,
put the outfit on.
her whole career, she was an old lady, and yes, and she was right there through the civil rights movement and all the women's rights movements and all that stuff, women's lib and all. So yeah, she was definitely, and I'm glad you mentioned her, because she should be more well known. For her impact. Yeah, and she's not. She's forgotten. When everybody thinks about the women comedians, they automatically think Phyllis Diller or Joan. And
and that's the funny thing. Where Davin schooled me last week on our show. He goes, well, what about Moms Mabley? And I remember watching a comedy, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I go, because I was saying Joan Rivers. No. She was the one that got that ball rolling, that made it possible for all the other icons, like Lenny Bruce for the guys, that made it possible for all those guys. Moms Mabley is the first female stand-up comic.
And you believe that? Brother, wait a minute, honey. You'll have to laugh a little louder. Mom can't hear you up there. That's it. Thank you very much.
Yep, and she was able to hang with all the guys of that era back then too, and on the Chitlin circuit with the Red Fox and all that stuff. I think she opened for Red Fox a few times, and then she, like you said, she was also did some TV. I think she was on like Smothers Brothers and those types of shows.
She did all that, you know. And she made it possible. She made it possible.
Great pick, man. So number 3, Moms Mabley. So my number 3 here also kind of goes in the same world as Moms in a sense, and it's Dick Gregory.
Yes.
So Dick Gregory, he wasn't, by any means the first black comedian, but he was the first black comedian, as he puts it himself, to stand flat-footed and just deliver comedy. He didn't have to dance around or act silly or any of that kind of stuff. He paved the way for like Bill Cosby and guys like that, who and he was also socially aware. He was pretty much like the black Lenny Bruce.
One day we come through with 2 innocent words, black power, everybody go crazy. But had we said brown strength, oh, everybody would accept that.
Yes. And in the time that he came through, I mean, that was, when all the civil rights movement was going on. And, he's at the forefront and he's speaking his mind, just as much as Pryor did. But like we said, Pryor was more introspective, where Gregory was more, skewering policy, skewering society, and
calling out hypocrisy.
Of course, now, don't get me wrong now. We doing all right. Hell, at the rate we going 10 years from now, you might have to be my color to get a job.
Absolutely.
It's guys like Dick Gregory who made comedy important to society.
Yes.
You know, because he helped, and he definitely helped move it forward, but he helped move society forward, helped push the civil rights movement forward.
Hey, you want to see some fireworks? Yeah. If we don't get what we looking for by the 4th of July, we're going to call for a nationwide boycott of Thanksgiving and Christmas.
He helped an olive branch to white audiences too, who accepted him and would laugh at him and then understand that some of the hypocrisies that were going on in the world at that time.
I think the white man is laughing at the same thing a person laughs at when they slam their hand in the car door and when it's about to heal. The problem is almost over. As Martin Luther King said, Jim Crow is dead in the South. It's just a matter of how expensive they want to make the funeral.
So Dick Gregory was a brilliant guy, very funny man, and an activist.
And the interesting thing is, Carlin would call that stuff out, but Gregory was living it.
2 weeks later, I walk in the house, she upset. Here's a letter from Susan Roebuck, final notice. I looked at it and said, thank God we won't be hearing from you no more.
Exactly.
So even though Carlin was very, very introspective and would call out, the decency with society, Dick Gregory would do the same thing, but he's like, I'm living that. Once again with him, that was Tuesday.
Exactly.
He helped people after he helped that gentleman lose that weight.
Long Island guy.
He helped
Hudson.
him out.
Yeah,
he helped that guy out. So even after comedy, he was helping people out.
He was just a great guy. Yeah,
great guy.
So let me go through the list here as we get now. We're getting into our number twos. Right now on our list, we have a very impressive list already. We have Lenny Bruce, Andy Kaufman, Richard Pryor, and George Carlin count as one. But then we have Mort Sahl, Moms Mabley, and Dick Gregory. So, pretty impressive list so far that we got here. I think right now, currently, we both agree on a few of these. So I guess we'll narrow that down after we get these last ones here. So, without further ado here, what's your number two pick?
All right, my number two, and I'm sorry to do this, but I'm gonna have to do a double up, and I'll explain why. It's gonna be Red Fox and Eddie Murphy. And the reason that I'm putting them in the same category is the performance, modes of performance. Red Fox did all these party albums, and people love the party albums.
Gertie's also makes brassieres. They come in 3 sizes: medium, large, and G-Monetti.
And people would listen to the party albums all the time. That opened up other comic. Now, it did have like Bob Newhart and stuff like that did the record, but just for getting the audience to get records, for comics to have their own records, which opened up for Carlin and stuff like that, I give it to Red Fox because in that part of the industry, he kind of opened that up where people wanted to hear these records and comics would start making their album.
Some guy wrote in the magazine, all black people carry knives, and I want to clear that up for you. All black people do not carry knives. My brother's been carrying an ice pick 26 years.
Now, why is Eddie Murphy in there? Because Eddie Murphy opened up the arena comic.
Ladies and gentlemen, Eddie Murphy!
He started with Delirious and all that. He started the age of the arena comic, which opened it up for Dice, which opened it up for Louis C.K., opened it up for all these other comics that have gone on. So that's why I include him in the one thing, in that thing of who opened up more media outlets, the media outlet. That's why I put those two in together.
You want some ice cream? You want to eat some of my ice cream, but want to lick? Psych. You want some ice cream? You want some ice cream?
Right, yeah. No, I think that's great. I think, like you said, Eddie Murphy definitely, both those guys definitely moved it forward, but I'll start with Eddie, because he begat Pryor. Pryor begat Foxx.
Right.
Right. But so they're all kind of from the same lineage. But if you ask comedians, you know, and they're honest with you, who influenced them, like today's comics, most of them will say Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
And then they learned from Eddie. Oh yeah, Richard Pryor. He's the original, right?
That's knowing your history. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why I hope a lot of guys want to learn their history.
Exactly, because Eddie was also the first kind of, and like you said with the stadium stuff, like the rock star comedian. He wore the leather outfit. He was also had sex appeal that the girls liked also. So yeah, so Eddie Murphy definitely pushed it forward to that regard. Because before that, comedians were always kind of like Woody Allen, either that or they were fat guys or whatever. You know,
Right.
they were like,
Or the biggest place you would see them would be Westbury Music Fair.
Right. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Right. Yeah.
And that would be the largest venue you'd go see a comic. But Murphy just and I think it was the time during the 80s when it was more media and it was more flash. And he was everybody loved him.
I got foreigners from all over the world walking up going, Eddie Murphy, fuck you. Fuck you, Eddie.
So going out and doing the Garden or something like that was normal, you know? And he opened the door for comics going, wow, I might be able to do something, you know, in that big of a scale. And it was Dice, Kinnison, you know, and the guys that came after them.
What a time for comedy, huh? That was
Yeah,
good.
it was amazing. And there was no holds barred, you know, and it was just flat out funny. And people think, oh, that's hurtful. It was just funny.
It is. Social media has been a blessing and a curse, and I think we're seeing.
Absolutely.
I think we're seeing the curse of it now, really coming to it, because it's easy. You just go on Twitter, you throw out meat to the culture there, the cancel culture. They'll feed on it, and then they'll destroy you. Right?
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to rebound from that, because when you look at guys like Louis C.K., who, in my opinion, whether it's popular opinion or not, I don't think he did anything that bad. He asked for permission. He did. I think he
didn't do anything wrong. He didn't do anything wrong.
I'm down in the cellar by the boiler like a troll down there. Just fucking miserable shit.
You know, and like when governors, and thank God for guys like James Dolce had the guts to put him in.
Yes.
I remember he was doing a secret show at Governor's. It's about maybe 3 years ago, and it was just internet. Just say Louis coming down. It's just we're not pushing it. Blah 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 blah. Now during the same night we were having a party in the cabaret room for Tim Gage. You know, and I got done. And I got to the club. I couldn't get near the place. The line, you know, I went into, and it was a rainy night, people are standing on line. If I went to cut in and go, but I'm going, you know, I'd be landed on the ground. I mean, so for somebody that everybody hates, for a show that was only introduced on the internet, for it to be sold out with people waiting patiently in the pouring rain to get in, Louis C.K.'s done. No. The cancel culture wants him done. But true fans of comic don't want him done. He's got a lot more to say, a lot more to do.
Exactly, and that's why Louis C.K. is my number 2 pick. And I picked Louis C.K. because of everything we just were talking about, but also if you look at his comedy, and like we said earlier, he is kind of a combination of Pryor and Carlin mixed, but he also has the balls to still do, even now, even his stand-up he's still doing now, he hasn't given in. He's still gonna go full force.
Yeah, and that's why you know you stand beside the guy, behind the guy. I did a show with him, and it's like, I opened up for Louis C.K. No, you were part of another bunch of comics, but was in a show with him, and if you notice the couch in the green room of Governors, wall to wall legal pads with everything on there. So you watch that, and I didn't bother him. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Right. And that's all I said. But I'm watching all these legal pads, and I'm like, this guy is a master, you know, and a master of what he does. All these legal pads, you know, with ideas, constantly writing, constantly bringing things, not afraid to try anything, you know. And you're looking, I go, this is a master at work. It really was. And he goes out there and he does this, you know, his whole thing. And people probably go, oh, well, yeah, he's got a stream of consciousness. No, he's very, very, very well prepared. very, very impressive to see as well.
He's well prepared. Like you said, his jokes are like hilarious. Like he's that guy who says a joke and then you're like, man, I wish I came up with that type of guy. And his angle on things, his perspective on things, and his edge, and his fearlessness to tackle certain subject matters and to talk about things. And this is even after, like I said, after he his whole controversy came out with this. To me, he's pushing it forward with his bravery.
If you're a guy, try to imagine that you could only date a half bear, half lion. And you're like, oh, I hope this one's nice. I hope he doesn't do what he's going to do.
He's pushing it forward with his moxie and sticking to comedy.
And the thing about it is, when you go out on that ledge with something, you need to have that point of view that'll bring. How he's saying that? Are you out of your mind? You can, and not only, and he knows you're going there, but he also is a craftsman where he's got things prepared that go, not only do I get it, that's hysterical. Right. That's a genius. That's an artist. And that's Louis C.K., you know? Amazing comic, iconic comic.
He is, truly, and I agree with that. So, all right, so I'll go through the list one more time before we hit the number ones here.
Right.
Now, well, so far we have on the list Lenny Bruce, Andy Kaufman, Pryor and Carlin combo, Mort Sahl, Moms Mabley, Dick Gregory, Red Fox Eddie Murphy combo, Louis C.K. And now for Joe Currie's number one, top five.
Right. My number one would be Rodney Dangerfield. Now, as you've seen, not only comic talent, but for other things that he did. Rodney Dangerfield was hysterical. Started late in his life, stopped, sold aluminum siding, got back into it, and wound up being an icon. I love Rodney Dangerfield. He was one of the best ever.
I'll tell you my trouble. I got the wrong doctor. You know my doctor, Dr. Vinny Boombots. You know my doctor? What a doctor. You kidding? Well, that doctor. I called him up. I told him I had diarrhea. Put me on hold.
However, the reason I'm picking Rodney is, number one, is the Young Comedian Special. The Young Comedian Special has launched more game changers than ever seen in comedy. Dice, Sam Kinison, Roseanne Barr, and the like, and nights where you would watch and go, oh my God.
Please, no pictures, all right? I don't want to be seen here. I want to bring on now a very talented guy, a guy who's worked for some of the most famous bistros in the country. No, I'm just kidding around. I'm getting nuts now. It's getting late, you know what I mean? You know how it is when you're born in a truck.
I'll tell you a quick story. Now, Anthony Cumia is one of my best friends.
Right.
There was, years ago, during a Young Comedian Special, Dice Clay comes on. Now, we have to go to we played in a band. We have to get to this show. I walk into pick in. I go, we got to go, dude. No, I'm not going. I go, what are you talking about? Because watch this guy. It was Dice on Young Comedian Special. We sat there and laughed our asses off. He goes, this guy is amazing. Nobody. And we wound up going to the gig. Anthony's brother Joe bawled us out that we were running late. Okay? Fast forward, bawled us out. I know, this guy, I don't care. Fast forward about 25 years. Anthony is starting to do Live from the Compound. His first guest was Dice, because Anthony knew Dice over the years. They're going down in the basement singing karaoke. Ant's brother's down there. Ant tells Dice the story when we watched him and that Joe yelled at us. Dice made Joe apologize.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. That's hilarious, dude.
Bio for Andrew Dice Clay?
We got a bio,
Dicey. I don't think I need a bio for my pal. Bio for How you doing, you bastard?
Yeah, you never know what tomorrow's gonna bring, right? Like, who would have guessed that,
But the Young Comedian Special brought game changers. And I don't think, with the exception of Louis C.K., and a couple of the others later, I don't think we've seen game changers in a while. And the way everything is now, I don't know if we're going to see game changers.
The only game changers we're going to see is down the road when some comic comes in and really goes against the grains of the standards now,
right?
You know, the counterculture. Because right now, moving it forward, I feel like we've kind of plateaued. I think a lot of comedians, they're all great comedians, but they're all basically doing the same thing. There's nobody shaking it up so much in today's culture. Like, I think to talk about like Opie and Anthony and what Anthony did, and a lot of comics from that, I call them the O&A comics, tough crowd comics, same thing, right? The New York City guys. I think they call it cringe humor. I think that cringe humor really turned the tide for comedy and gave New York its real edge. So like you know, I think I wasn't planning to do this, but I think I'm gonna say Anthony Cumia, because you know why? That's my number one. Because I know he's not traditionally a comedian, but to your point of what Rodney did for the comedians, you could say the same thing for Anthony. Because what he did was introduce, and this is before Tough Crowd and all that stuff, they introduced a crop of comedians that may never have gotten their due to that level, like the Jim Nortons of the world.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. And the thing about Anthony is I've been Anthony's fan. We met, and this is how long ago, I was gonna give my age away, 1977 in high school. And his brother Joe, they lived in California. His brother Joe came back from the summer, and he told me, hey, my brother's coming back to school. He's going to start school. Hook up with him. And him and I hooked up, and just making us laugh ever since. But he's always been brilliant, a brilliant comedy mind. So in the late 80s, Adam Ferrara is also one of our good friends.
Right,
Adam goes, I'm going to start to do stand-up. So he starts to do it. About a year and a half later, I go, all right, I'm going to give it a shot. And I start doing it. Anthony, I go, Ant, come out to the club, come out to Conquer Comedy, come out. I'm going to watch a movie. And you'd leave and you'd watch one of the most brilliant comedy minds sitting watching a movie with his girlfriend.
Right.
Then what happened was our band Rotka, we used to do parodies. We did parodies as well. And Electric Shock OJ was a thing during the OJ thing. So Anthony's brother Joe goes down to WBAB on the Opie Nighttime Attitude, and Ant goes, all right, this is my chance. And he made an impression on Ope, and then they got up to AAF and stuff like that. And I felt so good because people are seeing how brilliant he is. Yeah. And he should have been a stand-up. I've been doing the comics. He's been gracious enough to let me do spots in the comics of the compound. He goes out and he does 15 minutes solid, materially prepared. And he comes back in, and I'm like, I don't get it. I don't understand why. He just like to go through the process, because you know the process. But you know he likes to be behind him. But you watch him go out, and I'm like, you feel very happy, so happy that this thing that I knew, you know, is out there, and people are appreciating his genius. Exactly. And he is one of the top comedy minds in this country today. And I have no reservation for saying that. You know,
he holds up, and he could, you know, stand toe to toe with some of the greatest comedians. We've seen it through the show. Yeah, and think about the comedians that, as far as I know, that he kind of introduced to the world in a sense. It was like Patrice O'Neill, Bill Burr, Jim Norton. You know, the list goes on and on of all these comics from that
iconic comics. Yeah,
iconic comedians now that kind of made their way through them early through the O&A, and now are our top comedians. You know, all those guys.
Yeah. And, you know, and that's a great pick, Don. It really is, and for that reason. And he's like Dangerfield, brilliant comic mind. But he has launched some of the most, thanks to him, the show, he has launched some of the most iconic comments. Try that again, Joe. Iconic comments in the country today.
Yeah, true indeed. All right, so now we have this list. This list is stacked. This is a very impressive list of legends. And now we have to narrow it down to 5. All right. So I'll go through the list again, just so the people at home are keeping up with us. We have Lenny Bruce, Andy Kaufman, the Pryor Carlin combo, Mort Sahl, Moms Mabley, Dick Gregory, Red Foxx, Eddie Murphy combo, Louis C.K., Rodney Dangerfield, and Anthony Cumia. So we got to narrow this down to 5. This is crazy because this is comedians who moved comedy forward, and every single one of these comedians have done that. So right now, on my original list, I pivoted a little bit, so we could have so we didn't just agree on everything.
Right. Funny.
But we agree on Lenny Bruce. So we will
Yes.
put Lenny Bruce officially will go in at number 5. Okay, and I don't know if the numbers matter except for the number 1. I don't
Right.
know, but if you want to, we can put them in number order too. So we agree on Lenny Bruce, and then Andy Kaufman I'm going to put on hold for now.
Okay, I agree.
Because when you compare him to the rest of this list, Andy Kaufman, I do believe, moved comedy forward too, but I don't think he not as much as some of the other people on this list.
Right.
So tell me, okay, so Pryor, Carlin.
Pryor Carlin, I would put them at right under Lenny Bruce because it's in a sort of a chronological order sort of thing.
Right. So you put Pryor, Carlin at 5, put Bruce at 4, or keep Bruce at 5?
I would put Bruce at 5, Carlin and Pryor at 4.
Okay, so let me get this. So we got Bruce at 5, Carlin, Pryor at 4. Okay, so now we have Mort, Sahl, Moms Mabley, Dick Gregory, Red Fox, Eddie Murphy, Louis C.K., and then Rodney and Cumia.
I would put Moms Mabley next because she was the one that got all the iconic female comics of color and white as well.
I agree. She's like she was there for 2 major battles of comedy.
Yes.
And won them both, and she's
Yes.
a true icon. Definitely moved it forward. Okay, I agree with that. So at number 3, Moms Mabley. Okay, this is a good list, man. All right, so now we still have Dick Gregory, Red Fox, Mort, Sahl, Red Fox, Eddie Murphy combo, and Louis C.K., and then Rodney and Cumia. So I'm thinking I'm just gonna see who we can take off the list right now. So I'm thinking, just because of moving comedy forward, and who did it, who mattered more in a sense. I mean, again, all these comedians are great, but I think we could take Louis off the list.
Yeah.
So we'll remove Louis, so now we're narrowing it down, but we still have it's still tough here. So, and Dick Gregory, I think, great comedian, civil rights, but Moms is kind of representing him.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so we'll take. Okay, so now that leaves us Mort, Sahl, Red Fox, Eddie Murphy combo, Rodney and Cumia, and we have 2 spots left. So what are you thinking here?
I'm thinking because with Mort Sahl, he represented the West Coast movement and then hooked up with Lenny Bruce, but I think we have Lenny Bruce on there, so we kind of emphasized that basement. So Mort Sahl, even though he moved it, Bruce did too, and in conjunction. So I think we can move Mort off the list.
I agree with that because it's the same kind of rule we did with Dick Gregory. So we're like, all right, he's already being represented through Lenny. Okay, good. Okay, so now we're narrowing it down a little bit further. I think we have 3 guys. So we got Rodney, Cumia, and then Red Fox, Eddie Murphy combination. So
I would say the Red Fox Eddie Murphy combination, just due to the media, because where it is, because basically these set up, because if you want to say the people that Ant moved forward and the people that Rodney moved forward, those guys went on to do mega concerts. They went on to do classic albums. If Foxx and Murphy set that up, where they could move to that, it's like, okay, Bill Burr's gonna do a Madison Square Garden. Yeah, they can because Murphy did,
Eddie did.
And did you get Norton's new album and stuff like Yellow Rain about? Yeah, they did because Foxx set the tempo for that. So they set that plate for those guys to go to.
Good point. Yeah, because I see what you're saying, because they paved the way. So there wouldn't be...
because that was the next place for them to go.
Right.
Because those guys paved that way.
Okay, so we got the Foxx and Murphy combo at number 2. And now the number 1 is between Rodney, and the guy you grew up with, Anthony Cumia. So it's going to be kind of tough for you, but what are you thinking?
Anthony's one of my best friends. I love the man deeply. I'm going with Rodney Dangerfield. And why would you do that to your best friend or one of your best friends? Because he sat with me watching the Dangerfield specials, going, these guys are amazing. These guys are fantastic. These guys are breaking the mold. And with that in mind, he kind of felt that way when they got on O&A, pushing them the way Dangerfield pushed the folks from that. So Dangerfield influenced Cumia to get guys like that on the show. So much so. So I give it to Dangerfield because he not only was he a game changer, he influenced another game changer 20 years prior.
Great point. Well said, well deserved. All these. So we got a great list here, Joe. So
yeah.
So it is Rodney at number 1. So here we go. Here's our list. At number 5, Lenny Bruce. At number 4, George Carlin, Richard Pryor combination. At number 3, Mom's Mabley. At number 2, Red Fox, Eddie Murphy combination. And number 1, Rodney Dangerfield. These are the comics that moved comedy forward. What a great list, man.
This
Great
was so much fun. It's like comics love talking history on it.
Yeah.
That's why I don't get people that really don't know. But it's fascinating to see how everything intertwined with everything else, And I just hope that we get some game changes coming.
Yeah, I think they're gonna happen. I think that's the way comedy is built, and that's what I love about stand-up. It's been around since the Jester. It's the Emperor's Got No Clothes. You need somebody to call out the culture, and that person is coming up soon, and they're amongst us. It could be you, Joe.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, you're the best, man. I appreciate you doing this top 5.
My pleasure. It was an absolute pleasure, pal.
All right, folks, there you have it. That is the top 5 comedians that push comedy forward from me and Joe Currie. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and let us know your top 5, or if we missed anybody, or what your thoughts are. Love to hear them. Please, again, don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you next week.